You're listening to Leadership Loading, a podcast that inspires leaders to be continuous learners and provides insight for those making the leap from the front line to the boardroom. My name is Jason McLaren, and I'm an Air Force firefighter veteran and safety expert turned entrepreneur and nonprofit director. I'm sitting down with industry leaders to talk about their leadership traits and lessons they have learned that can make an impact on future leaders.
Hey everyone, it's Jason McLaren. Today our guest is Randall Niznick. We have a great show for you today. We're going to talk about Randy's career in the Navy and what he's doing when he got out, and a little bit about transitioning from the military sector to the civilian sector. So before we get in the podcast, I want to remind you about our hotline where you can text us or leave us a message, and we will get back to you or address your questions on the show. The hotline number is 214-856-0498. Once again, that's 214-856-0498. Okay, that's enough for the intro, so let's get the download from Randall Niznick.
Hey everybody, my name is Jason McLaren, and today our guest is Randall Niznick. He's a senior director with a major corporate real estate services firm, and he retired from the Navy after 23 years. When he's not doing his full-time job, he advocates for veterans on behalf of the facilities management profession to fill the talent gap in the industry. Randy, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, Jason. Appreciate it.
So yeah, me and you have a similar background, and I know that that facilities management is a really hard career field to fill. And I think that a lot of times people look at the job descriptions and they think that I don't meet all these qualifications, or I don't, have all these skills that they want. And it's kind of hard, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. So can you tell us a little bit about your background? I know I just introduced you as being in the military, but can you tell us, a little bit about your background going into the military and that sort of thing?
Yeah, certainly. So I am a retired Navy Seabee. So for those listeners that may not know, the Navy Seabees are the naval construction force. So usually get a deer in the headlights look when I say I was in the Navy and I did construction. Most people equate the Navy with being on ships. So they always wonder, how the heck can you do construction on a ship? So let me just put that out there that we do not go on ships. We do full-on construction projects. We were started back in World War II and did a lot of airfields and airstrips in support of World War II air operations. And then we just blown up from there into the construction force for the Navy. So I served 23 years. I started off in the trades, HVAC, plumbing, and I did 23 years, and I retired as an E7 Chief Petty Officer in 2013. And since I went through my career transformation from the military into corporate, I landed a few jobs at the onset with a few companies here and there, but never really found my niche necessarily. But now I am with a great company that's provided me a lot of growth and opportunity that just in the short 2 years that I've been there already. So I'm very happy where I'm at right now. I always knew that I wanted to do facilities management, and that was due to a tour of duty that I did while I was in the Navy at the US Naval Academy, where I managed Bancroft Hall, which is the world's largest single dormitory. So it's, I can't remember the square footage off the top of my head, but basically I managed facility operations, dealing with everything that you deal with as a facility manager. And that was when I realized, yes, this is what I want to do when I get out of the Seabees. So I always had my eyes set on landing a gig in facilities management, but I quickly realized that even though I had that awesome tour of duty for 3 years at the Naval Academy at a prestigious institution, right, managing a very high profile building, I thought that would kind of be my shoo-in for facility management roles out here in corporate America. But I quickly realized that it is not necessarily about those hard skills, those technical skills anymore. It's about those soft skills, those networks that you have or maybe don't have. So I quickly realized that I needed to establish myself and establish my identity and establish my value, if you will, to all of these corporate entities that I was interacting with. And that is my cheap segue into the personal branding aspect of things that I'm sure we will talk about here shortly.
Yeah, definitely. And the shoe in, I like that. I gotta. So let's just talk about that. The shoe in. I think a lot of veterans think that I'm entitled to get a position when I get out because I was a veteran and I did this and I did that. So how can we spin that as a positive and play up our strengths as ex-military candidates to get in those positions that we want to get?
There's a lot of tricks to the trade, if you will, but everything really does revolve around the individual and how they present themselves, how they market themselves, all of that, right? You see many, many people talking about it through LinkedIn, through other social media platforms. And it's really just about getting out of your comfort zone, getting away from the military community. A lot of veterans seem to, and I was guilty of it too, at the onset, to just network with other military and not talk to somebody who has no military background, because we right away have these unconscious bias, if you will, that they're not going to understand me, I'm not going to understand them, the conversation will go nowhere, so I'm just not even going to bother. There is still, I still see it, unfortunately. It really, it's a pet peeve of mine. It's frustrating to see, but it's still out there. The us versus them mentality, you still see it, where veterans, speak not so kindly of civilians. Sometimes civilians don't speak so kindly of veterans. And I think there's a lot involved with establishing yourself, and it takes a lot of work. But really what it comes down to is you have to really know who you are outside of that uniform. So one thing I think happens, speaking back to the personal branding, when you're in that uniform, that kind of makes your brand for you in a sense. Like I was a chief in the Navy. So anybody who knows anything about the Navy knows that chiefs in the Navy are well known to be the leaders, the frontline leaders. And to say you're a chief, everybody knows, in the military at least, knows what that means. They know what your capabilities are. They know what you value. They know all of that because you're a chief, and they see that anchor, they see you in that uniform, and you yourself identify that I'm a chief. So when you take that uniform off, you can no longer hide behind that rank anymore and have that rank be your brand. And I think this is where it gets tough for all of us. It was tough for me, is, okay, I am not the chief anymore. And my wife was very, very supportive of, and very, very honest and frank with me and telling me, Randy, you need to get over it. You are no longer the chief. You need to get over the fact that you are a chief in the Navy, and you need to just establish yourself as the professional that you are. And it took a while for me to, do that. But once I did, and I started establishing myself as a facilities professional who just so happened to serve in the military for 23 years, that changed my whole outlook and changed my whole mindset of how I approached networking conversations. Good example, right? When I first started networking, the first sentence out of my mouth was, "Hi, I'm Randall Niznick. I'm a US Navy veteran," or something along those lines. But it was always, the opening line was always, "I was a veteran," or "I served," or "I'm retired Navy." So that's what most people remembered me by, was he was a veteran. Well, that doesn't do you any good if you're looking for a job, because what does that tell a potential employer about who you are? What skills do you bring? All they're going to remember is, "Oh yeah, I remember Randy. Yeah, he's a retired Navy, or he's a retired Seabee." But they're not going to remember, "Oh yeah, and he also does facilities." So I changed that narrative, and now I don't even bring up that I'm a veteran unless somebody asks me. Now when I go to networking events, I just introduce myself as Randy, and I introduce myself as I'm a facilities professional. I serve communities and people through sustainable management and sustainable facilities management, and I go from there. And then as the conversation continues, usually, eventually, it'll be like, "Hey, did you serve?" "Oh yeah, I served." But you can see how the narrative changes there, and I think that's what veterans need to really try to do. Yes, be proud of your service. Always be proud of your service, but that is no longer who you are anymore, in a sense.
Man, there's so much meat on that bone I want to take off. But yeah, I liked you talked about being not the chief anymore, and I've talked about that in other episodes and in interviews I've done where, you know, some of these guys like yourself, you've been in 23 years, whatever. You get out, you know, you're running probably a team of, you know, sometimes up to 30, 40 guys or more, and then you go out and you're looking at these jobs where you're going to be mid-level management and you've maybe got 6 direct reports or 0 direct reports, and you've just got to go with it, right?
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're never going to be, it's very rare that anybody's managing over, 5 to 10 people.
Yeah.
I will say one job I managed 50. I had 50 direct reports, but that's kind of a rarity out here in corporate America. So yeah, don't be expecting to be managing a whole platoon-sized department. Not at least not at the very onset. Will happen in the future possibly. But even so, there's so many more levels of management out here in corporate that you're still not really managing an entire department. You may be managing. Kind of goes back to the military and the rules of 3, right? We never really managed a whole platoon. It's the rule of 3. We managed, 3 squad leaders who then managed 3 fire team leaders. I don't know. I know you were Air Force, so
Yeah.
but in the Seabees we're ranked, and our rank and file is just like the Marine Corps. So it's you had your platoon commander who was in charge of 3 or 4 squad leaders. Then those 3 or 4 squad leaders are in charge of the fire team leaders. The fire team leaders are then in charge of their fire team, which is only 3 to 4 people. So you're only managing 3 to 4 people. Directly, right? Directly,
Yeah.
even in the
Yeah.
military.
Yeah, and that's what I'm thinking about. Uh, I had a guy came out of the military that was the COO at a hospital I was at, and he was a former colonel. So, he was used to that, being in that high of a level where he's, second in command of the hospital, where you've got, maybe 1,500 people. But like you said, his direct reports, of course, were less. But, indirect, you're over the whole
Yep.
facility. Then you talked about translating military into the corporate side. I struggled with that when I got out because I was a firefighter in the Air Force. But like you said, I always introduced myself as I'm the veteran, hire me, basically. And so it wasn't until
Mhm.
about my 3rd or 4th year out of the military where I learned that I was writing my resume wrong. I was putting military right there at the top of it, and had to, change that narrative. When I did my opening introduction for my interviews, I had to, say, well, I'm a firefighter by trade, and kind of spin that narrative. So,
Exactly, and it's got to be, let's be honest. Not everybody, when you say you're a veteran or open up with a veteran, that could be taken positively or negatively depending on the receiving end. Some people, if you open up with "I'm a veteran," I mean, let's be honest. There's going to be some people that will interpret that right away as, "Oh, here we go, another veteran who thinks that we owe him a job." It happens. So that's why another reason why I say don't open up with "I'm a veteran," because even though you don't mean it to be that way, it could be taken that way. It could be taken in the light of, "Oh, here we go, another veteran who thinks we owe him a job," or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's a tricky thing, and you just don't want to do it. At the end of the day, yes, you're a veteran, but save that for the latter part of the conversation, not the opening line, because most people, like I said, will remember the opening line over the entire conversation. So you want to make sure that opening line is impactful. It speaks to you, it speaks to your brand, and it speaks to how you want them to remember you when you guys walk away from that room.
yeah. And, when I got out, I was looking for firefighter jobs. And so my opening intro, my introduction would be like, I'm a firefighter by trade, been doing it for this many years. And then I went into the emergency management field. So then I changed that to, I've been in the emergency management field for this many years because we had to take emergency management courses as a firefighter, right? So you've got to kind of spin that narrative. But it also,
Exactly.
when you're putting military on your resume, they don't know what an E5 is and what your job was. So do you agree with like rewording it to the civilian counterpart? So like on mine, I put US Air Force Fire Department, and then underneath I'll put, Staff Sergeant E5, but then I put the civilian equivalent, which is like a fire captain, because that way they kind
Right.
of understand it. You agree with that?
Yeah, I wouldn't even put anything in regard to rank or um or rate. Yeah, I wouldn't even put staff sergeant E5. That's you don't even need to put that. Just put it as
Yeah.
your civilian title and leave it at that, because you're just gonna cause confusion.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Makes sense.
So I just say just make everything civilian. Now I will say this is an area, I talk to a lot of veterans and I mentor a lot of veterans, but I will be honest, right? It's kind of one of those, as we used to say in the Navy, pick your rate, pick your fate. For me, I will be honest, and I think you could agree that the Navy Seabees, it's a little bit easier to sell ourselves to corporate as a Navy Seabee because we can say we were construction, we were carpenter, I was an electrician, I was a plumber, I was HVAC, I was a facility manager, I was a maintenance manager, versus our infantry brothers and sisters, right? That is a lot
Yeah.
more trickier. I don't have all those answers. I try to help my infantry. I talked to a Air Force guy a couple of years back. It was special operations for the Air Force. I can't remember the outfit that he was in. I never heard of it until I met this guy. I was like, I never knew you guys existed. It was something with special operations and communication. It's some kind of a special group. And I was like, man, you are like you're like
Air,
0.001% of the veteran
yeah.
population. Like I don't even know where to go with this one. Right. So
Was he
uh,
Spenstra?
I honestly don't remember now. It was like
Yeah.
2 years ago. So but I just remember I was just like, wow, I never even heard of this type of unit. And then when he told me what he does and all that, I was like, man, that's awesome. But yeah, this is going to be a little bit, even harder for you to really capture this and sell yourself, right? So, I think the whole spin on emphasizing your leadership skills, uh, to be frank, is getting overused now. It really doesn't say a lot. I think everybody knows veterans are natural leaders. We're trained to be leaders. I think that's kind of a given. So I don't think we need to emphasize that as much as we always seem to do. And it goes back to, okay, so you're a great leader, but what do at the end of the day, let's be honest, it's a sales pitch, right? Every person you meet, it's a sales pitch. So you got to know how to sell yourself, and you can't just say, yeah, I'm a retired senior leader in the military. That doesn't sell. It doesn't tell anybody anything in
Yeah.
regards to what you can do. And at the end of the day, what corporate wants to know is, what are you going to do to make our company better? There's a whole lot of things going on, and I don't even know if we're going to get into the whole facility management realm and workplace experience. And there's just so much going on. A lot of it is because of the digitization that is happening across all companies. Everybody is getting more tech. Everybody's getting more data driven. There's a lot of things that are just happening that you have to train yourself on, and learn on your own. There's plenty of avenues to teach yourself these.
Let's talk more about this sales pitch because I hate selling. I'm not a salesman at all. And, I didn't even get to go through the transition program in the military because I had a 23 days from when I knew I was getting out till I was out walking off base. And so I didn't have time to go through transition assistance or anything. And so, yeah, my first probably dozen interviews, I just probably tanked them. I wish I would have recorded them. But so what are the benefits of personal branding? Because that's basically you're building your sales pitch, right?
Yes.
So let's talk about that. What's the benefits of doing this and making sure you build that sales pitch, not only for your interviews, but for networking?
I think it all comes down to staying relevant. This is something that I heard or read about a few years ago. With the fast-paced change that is happening across all industries, across all companies, we are in a world of change, and the change is happening lightning fast due to technology, due to data. So you have to stay relevant. And how do you stay relevant? You stay on top of your game. You stay engaged with whatever profession you choose to do. You stay on top of what's happening in that realm. So for me, as you know, working in corporate real estate and facilities, it's all about workplace experience. It's all about everybody wants the same creature comforts that they have at home. They want it in their office buildings. Everybody who works in facilities pretty much wears a hospitality hat now, where before hospitality was more just, you know, your hotels, your food service organizations.
Right.
But everybody is in a hospitality role in facilities nowadays. So there's just a lot, and you have to stay, I think it just comes down to staying relevant. And as long as you're staying relevant and keeping current with what's happening, that'll help you solidify your brand and solidify who you are and what you bring to the table.
Definitely. So when you're not doing your full-time gig, what are you up to?
I got many things that keep me busy. I'm a family guy. I'm a man of faith, so I do a lot of things with my church. I have 3 children. So I have a teenage son who's in 3 different choirs, so that keeps us running. And I got a middle son, and I got a 5-year-old daughter who's in all kinds of dance. So, you know, I'm there for my family because, as you know, when you serve in the military, it's hard to be there all the time for your family. So I'm kind of making up for lost time, if you will, in that aspect. I'm a hobbyist drummer, so I do get on the skins and play some drums here and there down in my basement. And then outside of that, I do a lot of other things. I'm an active gardener, love to cook, love to bake, all that fun stuff. So I stay busy. And then also just talking to veterans. And as you said in the introduction, I do strongly advocate for veterans and the facility management profession. I just believe that many veterans fit the bill for facilities management. And the reason why is because, as I see it, you get to continue to serve. So as my tagline is, you serve people through facilities management. Because every time somebody calls you, as you know, you work in facilities too, every time somebody calls you, it's because they need something, they want something, or something is broke. So you're there to make somebody's day better, to improve somebody's day, essentially. You know, they came in and something put their day off kilter in regard to that facility. And you and your team are the ones that can bring that back into play, and now they can have a productive day. And I really think that a lot of veterans would get that service aspect of facilities. It's not just keeping the lights on. We are truly a service industry, and you have to have a customer mindset. You have to understand your customer, and you have to build those relationships with your customer. And it's all about serving and just making people's day just that much better in what you do as a facility manager.
Definitely. And like I've run across several veterans in the industry that are, you know, some of the top leaders, and I think that's a great commercial for the industry. So, all right. So if we have anybody on the listening that wants to, you know, connect with you, maybe ask you some more questions, how can they get a hold of you?
Usually LinkedIn is probably the best way to get a hold of me. I'm not a huge social media user. I don't use multiple platforms, right? So this is one thing I just want to put this out there too, right? So every veteran that's out there, you don't need to be on every single social media platform. Look at all the social media platforms, play with them, and then just use the ones that you are most comfortable with, right? So I tried Twitter, I tried Instagram, I tried Snapchat. It just doesn't do it for me. I don't enjoy it. I was tweeting for a while. It just doesn't do it for me. For me, it's always been LinkedIn. I really enjoy LinkedIn. It's done the most good. So again, for the veterans that are out there and just kind of getting exposed to all the social media stuff, you don't need to be on every single social media site posting 50 times a day. Just find those social media sites that work for you, work for your brand, and then use it to its maximum potential. Through LinkedIn, so that's probably the best way. You can find me on Facebook too. Nothing to hide there, so you can find me on Facebook. But those are probably the two easiest ways to get hold of me. You know, I'll just close with this. One thing that I'd like with veterans is we do have that ABL mentality. It's what I call it, always be learning.
Yep.
I think that's one of the things that sets us apart is we are always learning. So use the tools that are out there to continuously learn, right? I mean, I'm on YouTube all the time. YouTube has a wealth of information on there. And you can find so much. And then, of course, I'll put a cheap plug for LinkedIn. You know, everybody should know now, I would hope, that as a veteran, you get 1 year free premium subscription. And not every veteran fully understands what that premium subscription really means, but I can tell you it is awesome because you get to use LinkedIn Learning, and there are some great training courses on LinkedIn Learning. You know, so take advantage. You know, it's not just the technical courses. I did courses on executive communication, emotional intelligence, branding, and all that was all through LinkedIn Learning. So always be learning. It really is a knowledge economy now. You've got to be smarter than the guy next to you kind of thing, because the competition is just so darn tough now for employment. So always be learning. That's right. There's a whole damn science behind all this stuff, man. It's even when I post on LinkedIn, like some of the things I post that I think are going to get a lot of views, maybe get 50. And then the ones that I post that I just think, I just post, I don't think much of it, they go to like over 4,000 views. It's like, wow, what was so attractive to this post? You just don't know, man. There's people that get paid good money to look at all that, figure out what makes a post go, get a lot of views. But yeah, it's very interesting. That's for sure. So, oh yeah, it's crazy. And the audience and what the audience is looking for is changing every day. I don't know how long you've been on LinkedIn. I've been on LinkedIn for a long while. So, I was on LinkedIn when writing and publishing articles was the in thing.
Right.
And that was, so I have about 25 articles that I published. It was awesome. Then all of a sudden I went to the videos, and then all of a sudden the videos was the thing. And now it seems like those are starting to go by the wayside. So yeah, you just never know. Every couple of years, it's a new niche that people are looking for on these platforms, and it's just, it's crazy. But anyway, I got to get going here. I got to get back to the grind. So,
all right, man.
But definitely, if you want to do a follow-up podcast, just reach out again. And it was fun. I really enjoyed it. So thanks for having me.
Me too. Thanks for coming.
All right.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to follow and interact with us on all the social media outlets: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and our website, leadershiploading.com.
Thanks for listening to the Leadership Loading Podcast. You can support this podcast on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/leadershiploading to get access to exclusive content, chats, and a whole lot more. Again, that's patreon.com/leadershiploading, or visit our website, leadershiploading.com, for more options.